I'd like to present this interesting case, a patient with a post-traumatic zonular dialysis with a vitreous disturbance. We'd like to go through the principles in the management and like to discuss the way in which this case was managed. This is the case. The patient who presented to us, which clinically appeared to be like a 2 o'clock hour of a zonular dialysis. There wasn't any obvious vitreous in the anterior chamber, and there wasn't any phacodermosis. Let's see what unfolds and let's see how we managed this case. Meticulous care and attention to detail are taken while creating the incisions. And this is important because in a compromised case, you don't want any difficulty during instrumentation in and out of the eye during the surgery. Next, I introduce some diluted triamcinolone in the anterior chamber to look for any disturbed vitreous. And as you can see, it's clearly obvious now that there is a significant disturbance of vitreous which has prolapsed into the anterior chamber. Upon washing out the triamcinolone from the anterior chamber, I notice that the vitreous actually goes back via the zonular dialysis into the posterior segment. Next, I stain the anterior capsule with blue dye prior to performing the capsular rhexis. But as I wash out the blue dye, once more I see the prolapsed vitreous. Once more I inject some viscoelastic into the anterior chamber, and once more the strand of vitreous goes behind the lens into the posterior segment. I now proceed with the capsular rhexis. I've just injected a dispersive viscoelastic to keep the vitreous away. I now proceed with the capsular rhexis. And as in any case of zonular dialysis, I decide which is the center of the nucleus. I start from an area away from the zonular dialysis and finally get to the area of the zonular dialysis. Since I don't see too many folds in the anterior capsule and I'm able to proceed with the capsular rhexis, I don't need to resort to the use of any hooks to support me in making the rhexis. With significant ease, I'm able to complete the capsular rhexis in this case. I now make a third paracentesis incision in the area of the zonular dialysis to be able to support the capsular edge with a capsular hook in this particular case. I intermittently inject some dispersive viscoelastic over the area of the zonular dialysis. Next, I inject the dispersive viscoelastic under the capsular rhexis edge at the proposed site of holding the hook or the introduction of the CTR. Let's now learn how to use the capsular hook in cases of zonular dialysis. As compared to the iris hooks, you will note that these hooks have got a large hook which is fairly long, and the end of it is blunt so as to not damage any part of the capsular bag. The hook is introduced through the normal sized paracentesis incision, the stopper withdrawn, then hooks onto the capsular rhexis edge, after which the entire capsular bag is lifted up and the stopper pushed down towards the limbus, thereby attaining a vertical stability of the capsular bag. Having stabilized the capsular bag, I now proceed to introduce the CTR into the capsular bag with a hand-on-hand maneuver with the view of achieving an equatorial stability of the subluxated cataract. Having inserted the CTR, I now proceed to perform a gentle hydrodissection on either side. Following the introduction of a dispersive viscoelastic, I now proceed with the nucleus management, wherein I plan to perform the direct chop technique. But as soon as I introduce the phaco probe with irrigation in the anterior chamber, the iris hook slips off. I try on multiple attempts to hold on to the capsular bag again, but unable to do so, I choose to remove it because now I do have a CTR in the capsular bag and I believe my bag is fairly stable. Let's now proceed to watch the nucleus management. Without rotating the nucleus, I turn the tip in either direction and break down the nucleus into smaller fragments. Once the first fragment has been removed, I then turn to the other side, impale into that heminucleus, break it down, bring out the fragment and emulsify it. Now I'm actually left with a rather large fragment. So to reduce the manipulations within the eye, I sculpt down to the center of that heminucleus, break it down into 2 halves, and turn by turn without rotating the nucleus, bring each of the fragments up into the anterior chamber and emulsify them in the phacosafe zone, that is zone of the pupil. After which, I proceed to the epinucleus removal. In order to do so, I first change my settings to the epinucleus mode and aspirate as much of the epinucleus as I can. I replace the chopper with a dialer and use the Sinskey hook to hook out the subincisional epinucleus out of the capsular bag, after which, as you can see, it is aspirated with significant ease. At the end of the epinucleus removal, it's important, as you can see here, to perform a viscofluid exchange. We now proceed to the bimanual irrigation aspiration. With care and caution, the cortex is removed circumferentially. Before swapping the irrigation aspiration in the other hand, once more you'll notice how I perform a viscofluid exchange. A viscofluid exchange is extremely important, especially in compromised cases like this, because you never want any accidental shallowing of the anterior chamber, and in this particular case you definitely don't want vitreous prolapsing out to the area of the subluxation like it did so earlier. With this, as you can see, we come to the end of the cortex wash, and you will note that we've managed to complete the cortex wash without any further disturbance of vitreous. We now proceed to the implantation of the single-piece monofocal IOL within the capsular bag. Why I chose a single-piece IOL is because this was a small zonular dialysis and I've achieved an equatorial stability of the capsular bag, in this case by implanting a CTR. Let's now watch the implantation of the monofocal IOL. Following the completion of the IOL implantation, the excess viscoelastic is washed out from the anterior chamber. We have to ascertain that we do not have any major rocking and rolling movement of the IOL, because that could disturb the vitreous once more, and that is something we'd like to avoid. Following the completion of the visco wash, whilst maintaining the irrigation still in the eye, the left paracentesis and the main incision are hydrated, at the end of which the irrigation is removed from the eye and the right paracentesis incision also hydrated. And this, as you can see, is the end result that we achieved. In order to ascertain the absence of any vitreous in the anterior chamber, I injected some diluted triamcinolone into the anterior chamber and then washed it out. That confirmed the absence of any disturbed vitreous in the anterior chamber. This now brings us to the end of this surgery. I do sincerely hope that you found this video tutorial useful. Thank you.